It's here and bigger than ever. The 2021 Harlem Holistic Wellness Week Virtual Expo. Hundreds of vendors, thousands of viewers, dozens of interviews and workshops. April 24th through May 1st, the Global Health Conversation. The Harlem Health and Wellness Week Virtual Expo. For more information and how to become a vendor, visit h2w.nyc. That's h2w.nyc.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are globally. Welcome to the Love Stream with Dr. Flora on its 8th annual Harlem Holistic Wellness Week 2021. This is a place where awareness happens. Knowledge, freedom, and the flow of the highest vibrations occur here. Discussions and topics that may make you feel uncomfortable, like I like it to be. Healing becomes awareness, and the less suffering dissolves and transforms to love, light, and clarity. Today's topic is very, very important to discuss that most people do not talk about. It's the codependency with toxic mothers. And here to discuss that is the wonderful Amir Williams, also known as AJ. Welcome. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you, Flora?
I am doing wonderful. Always great to see you. Always shining and vibing. And
Same. Good to see you, sister.
Thank you. So please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. As you said, my name is Amir Williams. I write under AJ Williams. I was born and raised in New York. Actually born in Harlem, 114 St. Luke's, and raised uptown in Washington Heights. And I started my career in acting at 2 years old. I was raised by my mother, who was a Broadway actress, dancer, and singer. And I started my career too doing commercials. And at about 6 years old, I got my first big break on the show, A Different World. For those of you that remember that, playing the dorm director's son, JT. And I went on to do more commercials, more theater. Did some TV movies, and then I got my first role on the soap opera All My Children at about 12 years old. And I stayed there for a couple of years. I went on to do some operas. I even voiced a cartoon, was on shows like New York Undercover, Law and Order. And, through all that time that I was coming up, I always had an interest in writing and directing. And I used to write short stories and things like that. And so the last couple of years, I've been focusing on that. I have 2 books out, one of them, which we're going to talk about today. But yeah, so that's my focus now, writing and directing. That's what I'm working on.
Beautiful. And I really commend you in being one of New York's own and Harlem at that.
No doubt.
Beautiful. It's to discuss things that most people like brown and black folks don't talk about. And I think it's so important to see people like us discuss things that have been happening for years. Sometimes
Definitely.
people think it's culturally accepted, but really it's toxicity.
Right.
And, what
Very
is the
much
best
so.
way to discuss it is when we live through it and do it with love. And I really commend healing through love and the things that you've said. And I had the opportunity to look at your book, which is amazing. The Bates
Thank
Theory. Pretty much discusses codependency and toxic mothers. What are some of the misconceptions of having a toxic mother?
Well, that's a good question, Flora. And it speaks to your point that you would certain things that that are normalized. Certain things are normalized in our culture, that certain behaviors that toxic mothers do are normal. I talk about in the book, there's a chapter that I had, the third chapter, called Love and Violence, which talks about the symbiotic relationship that we have in the Black community between bringing our children up in a violent manner and exposing them to violence, and loving them at the same time. What that kind of what that paradox does to a child's mind and to their feelings about themselves and their feelings about their parents. And so, most of us, if we talk, we have similar, if not the same, stories
We're
about how we
losing
were
you.
brought up.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, we're losing you. So if you can repeat that and just come closer
oh,
to.
okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was saying that if we talk, many of us, and converse, we'll find out that a lot of our stories are the same or similar about how we were brought up with regards to how we were talked to, and violence and things like that. A lot of that we share, and it's laughed about, it's joked about by comedians or by amongst us, as something that's normal. But it definitely affects us, and it affects how we view violence, towards people that look like us and towards our women. And
Mm,
so, I wanted to get into that. The also, uh, as a man grows older, um, a lot of older men feel that it's proper or normal to have a relationship with their mother where she interferes in their finances, where she makes decisions about their romantic partners, interferes with their raising of their children. There's no boundaries for a lot of these relationships, and that's one of the things that I talk about that seems to be normal in our culture.
right. And let's be very specific. We're not saying not to help us and assist us when we need abuelitas or grandmas or mommies. We're not saying that. We're saying when you pass that boundary and disrespectfully do not
Yeah,
consider the decisions that we make in raising our children. And that is important to clarify. So we don't want to
yeah.
misconstrue people thinking that that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about. It's when
No,
you
no,
pass
no.
the boundaries and disrespect.
Absolutely. I mean, in the book, I preface the book with talking specifically about, the types of mothers and relationships that are healthy, and later on, I talk about, how those children come out most of the time when they come from those types of home. No, this is talking specifically to, the mothers that are neglectful, the mothers that are violent, that are sexually abusive, that are physically abusive, mentally ill, and children growing up in those circumstances. So this speaks specifically to those kind of scenarios. This is not talking about all mothers, or the relationship with mothers. It's great to be close with your mother. It's great to have her involved if she's mentally healthy and emotionally healthy, and if the relationship between the two of you is healthy. If it's not, then those interactions and that relationship is going to be more problematic than it is helpful. And the aim of the book is to talk about some of the ways that it is problematic for the mothers raising sons, and how it's problematic for grown men interacting with their mothers now. So my hope is that we can abandon certain behaviors that have become regular in our culture and our community, and move on to things that work better, and identify some of the things that, like you said, have become normalized, that are not normal, and get rid of those. So that's
And
that's my hope.
yes, thank you for the clarification for those that were not sure what you were saying. So thank you, AJ, for that. And the next question is pretty much discussing um, the effects of why writing this book is very dear to you. The
Um,
base theory.
yeah, I mean, it's I outlined certain issues that I went through with my mother, and my mother was a great mom. I mean, she taught me many things. She was very loving, very encouraging. I mean, I never had, even to this day, I don't have any um self-esteem issues, because she always made sure that I felt, um that I was praised for, my good qualities, and that I was held up and things like that. But I talk about specific things that did affect me. But it was more for others than it was for me, because there were certain things that I saw from males that I know in my family, my friends, that didn't have the clarity, for lack of a better word, I should say, the clarity that I have, and are not able to voice their concerns or opinions the way that I could. And I felt like, especially for many of my female friends that talked about their dating lives and things that they would like to see from their men, things that they saw from their men that weren't so good. That a lot of those things are rooted in their relationship with their mothers. So it's near and dear to me because I felt like with some clarity, we could all understand each other better and get to a place where we're operating in a more healthy way, right? So for those men that don't understand where they need to set boundaries with their mothers, this book will hopefully enlighten them to those points. For mothers that are doing harmful behaviors to their sons and don't know, maybe from their own trauma or maybe from what they've seen, they can get some light on that and stop certain behaviors. And for the women that are dating men with mother issues, with codependencies, they can help their men to see these things. So that's why it's so dear to me, because I feel like if we get to issues at the root, then we can stop a lot of problems, right? So
Amen.
that's the key. Get into the root of problems,
Roots. Yes.
So
I have
that's my aim.
specifically for these shows, I have um, flowers back here, along with my ancestors, my grandmothers behind there, and they were
Mm.
about the root. I come from Puerto Rico. I'm a native New Yorker, and this is one of the
Hmm.
important things that we talk about. We did it with love, but we also spoke about the roots. And this was where we all
Right.
sat down in the same table, and there was also a hot seat. And communication
Oh
was
wow.
important.
Yeah.
Caliente. So we would sit there and was like, whoa, it's hot seat. But you know what? It was healthy.
Yeah.
Communication, getting the root of it all. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And sometimes it got a little fiery, but sometimes we got to go into this little fire to bring it down and cool it off. And those are one of the important things that I really enjoy you speaking of is healthy communication.
Hmm.
And that leads me to this. When you find toxicity and codependency on men, do you find it that it was mainly through a one parent household, which was mainly a mother without a father?
Yes, that's a very important issue, and that's not to say that those households can't work or produce good men or healthy men, but the reality is, in seeing how to treat a woman properly, they need their father there, and that's a whole nother book. A lot of people do speak on that subject, and I touch on it here, but the reality is, I wanted to focus on the parent that they do have, because
Mm,
that's the parent that's influencing them. So if a large percentage of us, I don't know the exact percentage right now, but if a large percentage of us are raised with single mothers, that means the mom has the biggest influence over us. And so the question is, what does that influence look like? Is it a healthy one? Is it a mentally balanced one? Is it, what I mean? Or are there other things going on? And we can't deny that if he spends the large majority of his time around his mother, that she has a significant influence over him, right? So if she has some trauma that she hasn't healed, if she has some ways that are not so good, if she's self-centered, if she's narcissistic, if she's damaged, whatever, those issues bleed onto their children without them knowing. The way that they speak to them, the way that they parent them, like I said, with violence. Who do they bring around them in their dating life? Do they bring a lot of men around them? Is there no male influence? All of these things have an effect and an impact. And the more that we deny that, the more we'll keep seeing the kind of men that we see today who are misogynistic, who are closed off, who are violent towards women, who seem to hate women. Those feelings don't come from nowhere. You know what I mean? So
right.
the idea is like, yes, these are horrible things to see, but if we want to stop them at the root, we have to ask ourselves, well, why is it happening? Why would a man that was raised under a supposedly loving, nurturing mother grow to hate women? Doesn't make a lot of sense, right?
It
So
doesn't.
we have to ask ourselves, more than likely, the opposite was true. More than likely, the household he came from wasn't nurturing or loving, and
With a lot of
because of
violence.
the way that men are made and the relationship between their mothers are, we shy away from talking about those things. We don't feel like we can talk against mother because it seems like we're either disrespectful or we're ungrateful for the sacrifices that she made bringing us up. But that's not true. Every relationship needs to be examined. Just like we examine a romantic relationship to see if we're still getting what we need and it's still healthy, that relationship between mom needs to be examined too. And if we don't, more than likely, it's more than possible that there's some harmful things going on and that we don't
Wonderful.
realize. So.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. And I truly feel that because it's about feeding each and everyone's soul.
Mhm.
We sometimes don't have the choices that's been given to us in this era of time. But one of the things that I realized with the pandemic of corona, and corona means crown in Spanish, is we have the choice to make a difference now. And the choices are, let's check ourselves. Let's see if this was toxic. Because
Yeah.
most of the time, if you are having that self hatred against your mother, then there was some toxicity there. And let's
Hmm.
heal. And let's also discuss that sometimes the parent may not be ready, but if you are, begin
Right.
there for your child and moving
Right.
forward. Was that a reason for you when you started having children?
Very important. I mean, like I said, I talk about these things in a book, but I never knew my real father, and I had a stepfather, and so it didn't seem like a big deal until I became older. Because as you become older and you have children, it becomes about family origin. It becomes about, your family line and togetherness. And without that second half, there's a lot that I was missing. And so, one thing about me is that I'm very present in all my children's lives. I have two girls and a boy in the middle, and I'm very involved, very open communication, and that's important to me because I realized from some of the things that were passed down in the generations before, our generation of parents didn't have that, right? They shy away from talking about certain things. They shy away from engaging certain truths. And so I wanted to be as transparent as possible, age appropriate, of course. But I think that's very key because this generation of children is ahead of us in terms of their understanding and their access to information. So hiding things from them or lying to them is not the way to go. So you have to be transparent, even if it's embarrassing, and because that builds trust, and
Mm.
that means that your kids are going to trust you, and they're going to want to come to you, and the relationship will be healthier that way. So I think that's one of the things that's so important to me is breaking those bonds of like secrecy and ignoring that. Unfortunately, our culture is used to,
Mm.
especially when it comes to family dynamics, like I talk about in the book. We're talking a lot about therapy in today's time, but that's not a word that we grew up with, a lot of us. Nobody, because it means
No,
what? It means talking about your family. It
your
means talking about
business.
what goes on in your home, right? Our family business. But the question is, when we examine it, what does family business really mean? It really is talking about negative things that we don't want the outside to know about, right? So the question becomes, instead of hiding what's negative, why don't we stop doing it? Why don't we change it so that we don't have anything to hide? You know what I mean? So that's the place where I'm coming from
That's
now.
what you call healing, my brother.
Right.
And that's what it is. And I tell all my patients this, in order to continue to move forward, it's not always going to be easy.
Right.
It's not always going to be easy. To feel zenful, it's about going through all this baggage and dirt to get to the top of that mountain. But then you
Yeah.
can breathe a little bit easier. And you're
That's right.
always going to be much clear when you cleanse it out, when you limpia it out, right? And that's
Right.
why I love the hot seat in my household because it was hot and caliente and you
Oh
couldn't
wow.
run from it, but it was helpful. Yes, it was embarrassing. Sometimes your secrets were told and we're like, but oh, mommy, yep, there's
Yeah.
no secrets here, no door closed in my room. This is,
Right.
and so because it was put out in the open, so we had to think about it twice, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important lesson to discuss. My next question, AJ, is and have you seen an increase in love and violence? You discussed that in chapter 3 of your wonderful book, The Base Theory, since the pandemic started. And if so, what do you think is driving it?
Oh yeah. I mean, we always are hearing about, unfortunately, the boyfriends of mothers, hurting them, killing them, the boyfriends of mothers killing children, um, men committing suicide themselves. Um, and I think what's at the root of it, I mean, of course, this is something that we're all dealing with the pandemic being closed in, a lot of our options being cut off. But at the root, I think it's those traumas never being dealt with. One of the things I talk about in the book is, with the mother dating, and this is a touchy subject. If she's a single mother, I said there's nothing wrong with her dating. She needs companionship. She needs her needs met, but it has to be done in such a way to protect the child. And a lot of the times, women invite men into their life, and into their home without fully understanding what's going on with them mentally and emotionally. And that's
Mm,
where the danger comes. And you see the news and you ask yourself, how can a man beat a 2-year-old to death? Well, if you understood what kind of home he came from and what kind of mental and emotional issues he was dealing with before you invited him in your home, you would have a clearer picture. And then you could make the decision if you thought he was safe enough to have around your children. But a lot of the times that kind of vetting is not happening. And that's why we see the end result of violence against the women and violence against the children, because the women don't truly understand the men that they're dealing with. And on the flip side of that coin, I don't think the men truly understand what they're going through, which is one of the points of my book, to enlighten some of these issues. I don't think they understand what is driving them a lot of the times. Some of these toxic behaviors that they were raised with and saw in their home uh, is driving who they are as a person in a negative way, and they don't even realize it. So their actions are coming out in a way that is unhealthy and that is violent and dangerous.
Right, because that's considered normal for them. They didn't even realize what that is because that's been all their lives. But it's
Right.
toxicity. When love hurts, that's not love. That's toxic. And we
Right.
got to remember that. And to continue on with a couple of last words before we end this wonderful topic, we got to bring you back to the love stream to discuss more
Oh,
on this.
thank you. I would love to come.
Um, is tell us some resources that may be available for men if they need help in recovering from a toxic mother.
Well, I don't want to recommend any particular therapy, because everybody's situation is different. And of course, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist. But one of the things that has been great for me is men's groups that are talking, right? We see a lot of those that are popping up on Clubhouse is one platform, Facebook, IG. There's a number of places where men are getting together, specifically men of color, Black men, talking about their issues, right? So this is something that's new. This is something that was not really done in our culture, and I think that's a beginning to us healing and talking. So therapy is definitely a good idea if you're ready for that. Like I said, everybody's situation is different, where they are is different, but I would recommend getting in one of those talk groups. I think that's like a baby step to getting yourself ready for therapy. So if you're
Mm.
able to confront your feelings and let them be known to a secondary person or to a group, then that can free some of that anxiety and get you ready for therapy.
Wonderfully said. And for those that may want a little bit further, I highly recommend talk therapy and counseling with psychiatrists and psychologists and even acupuncture. I've helped many people with trigger traumas from ancestral traumas with acupuncture. So if you're interested in that as well, you can look at florahealing.com to assist you on those emotional trigger points. So, my final and last word for you in question is a word of encouragement of today's listeners. What would you give out to today's listener? A word of encouragement.
I would definitely say that better times are ahead if you're willing to do the work. And the first point of doing the work is admitting to yourself what you're feeling. You have to get in contact and in touch with what you're actually feeling about the people in your lives. Once you identify that, then you can set some boundaries. You can get people out of your life if they're harmful. You can bring healthy people in. But at first, you have to be honest with yourself. And if you do that, improvements on your life are on the way.
Mm. Begin with yourself. Start now and begin with yourself. That's true healing, and it's not always going to be easy, but you have many people like AJ, group therapy, books that like the Bates theory, acupuncture, are so many ways that you can look for help. And I thank you, AJ. And where can they find this wonderful book, The Bates Theory?
Thank you. Well, the Bates Theory, A Guide to Overcoming Toxic Mothers and Male Codependency, is available in ebook and paperback on Amazon. If you're interested in a signed copy, personal copy from me, you can contact me at the Bates Theory on Instagram and DM me there, or on Facebook under the name Amir Williams, or the Bates Theory on Facebook as well. And just send a DM, and we'll get a signed copy out to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you. Keep doing the great work for our community. Peace and blessings, AJ. And thank you
Same
for
to you,
watching the
Flora.
Love
Thank
Stream.
you for having me.
Thank you. Thank
Much love,
you.
sister.
Always much love here, baby. Peace and blessings to you. And thank you for watching the Love Stream, Harlem Holistic Wellness Week 2020. Peace and blessings, everyone.